And it has begun. James Comey indicted by the Trump DOJ. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your Civil War moment. It's fascinating to me that there is this argument that nothing is going to happen, nothing ever happens, because for the love of all that is holy, can you please? Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I don't say that lightly, assassinated. He was speaking to a college. I don't think people really understand what time it is. And I'm not prescribing anything. I don't know what you should do. I am not trying to be a leader in any capacity. I am simply looking at the temperature and the clock. Donald Trump's DOJ has formally indicted the former head of the FBI. It's happening. We've got moves being made by California to stifle the law enforcement capability of Donald Trump, with conflicting orders being given out. Not only with the National Guard, but Gavin Newsom now instructing federal law enforcement, which he has no authority over, to remove their masks. Let me break down for you what that means and where we go. But I will stress, what time is it? Charlie Kirk is assassinated. One of the most prominent political activists and personalities in the country. I had previously stated I think he was the most prominent conservative in the world. I think everyone would agree, with many saying he was on track to be president. If you really knew him personally, you didn't even need to, actually, to be honest. If you just watched his work, you knew it. He was killed. We see the left celebrate, call for more. The ideology that motivated the alleged killer, AOC espouses from the House floor. Jimmy Kimmel blames Trump supporters. Now, that may seem somewhat innocuous to a certain degree, like he's just being a dick, right? But if you take a look at conflict, crisis, and civil war, the demonization and the escalation, this is a major component. For this man was taken off the air, and the result was a liberal shot up an ABC station. Several terroristic threats were sent to many more, and ABC caved and brought Jimmy Kimmel back. The left celebrated. Not even a week later, a man unloaded on an ICE facility, killing 2 detainees. His target was ICE. He wanted them to be terrorized. And 2 days after that, is it 2 days or was it just a day after that? James Comey indicted. In between, of course, Donald Trump has designated Antifa a terrorist organization, issued an additional executive order ordering all government to dismantle the structures of the far left terror infrastructure, even going so far to say George Soros. In the meantime, we have ICE enforcement, these raids, and we have the principal point of conflict, Gavin Newsom saying to National Guard and to ICE, obey me and not Donald Trump. And the question I have for you right now, you can comment and let me know what you think, is who are they going to listen to? Is ICE going to say, look, I'm federal, so I answer to the executive government? Or are they going to say, I live in California, so I answer to my governor? A lot of questions we're going to ask. Now, let me break down first where we're at with the James Comey indictment. And then, let's talk about the ramifications of everything I just described. But again, I implore you, please comment below. Mediaite reports James Comey is a dirty cop. Trump prosecutes the destroyer of lives, ex-FBI chief, on Truth Social. They're going to say a federal grand jury in Virginia indicted Comey late Thursday on 2 felony charges related to his September 2020 testimony before Congress about the FBI's investigation into alleged ties between Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia. But the indictment drew sharply polarized reactions in Washington, with critics warning the DOJ was being weaponized by the president. Who cares? Guys, I know you're not stupid, and neither am I, and I don't care to waste your time. We've been through the Democrats going after Trump, raiding his home, state-level Democrats prosecuting Trump and his lawyers. I don't care. Donald Trump is now saying Letitia James, Adam Schiff, James Comey, and more. George Soros, let's see. And you're going to say to me, liberals, weaponization, your words mean nothing. And therein lies the problem, because they mean nothing to you, dear viewer. You know, I know. Now, perhaps some of those viewers are liberals who are just hate watching. Usually I think around 2% at this point. To those people, I say your words are meaningless. I literally don't care. Your arguments don't even go into my ears. When I see the Krasensteins go online and say Trump's weaponizing, blah, 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 you may as well be speaking French, because we dealt with this already when Democrats did it to Trump. When Jimmy Kimmel gets taken off the air, your words are meaningless because we saw them go after everyone. ABC nuked their highest rated show to get rid of Roseanne over naughty words. Your words mean nothing. They fall on deaf ears. James Comey has responded saying, I am not afraid, in defiant response to the indictment. Let's have a trial. I don't think this even matters. Let's play a statement for you guys. You may have seen it, but let's roll.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
Yeah, his words mean nothing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you this. Gavin Newsom fears there won't be a presidential election in 2028. Now, the Democrats have been screaming this for a long time. They said it about 2024. They said it about 2020. Sure. There's breaking news this morning, or actually last night, in the wee hours of the morning, that there were around 300 federal agents on January 6th, with now evidence suggesting, as most of you probably already know, they were instigating the violence. That's why there are questions around certain individuals who literally told people to go in the building. Fedsurrection, everyone says. I give you this, liberals. It doesn't matter what you think is true. It doesn't matter what you can prove. The right is determined. On the right, it is a fact. January 6th was instigated by federal law enforcement. And as I often say, to those that are wondering and watching with mathematic diligence to try and figure out what the next moves are going to be, I give you only the truth never mattered. I'm going to pause a little bit so the libs can take that and pull it out of context. But of course, you already understand what I mean. Is James Comey innocent? The right has made up their mind, and so has the left. So it doesn't really matter, does it? All that matters is, do we win the power struggle? That's where we're going. Now, feds typically don't bring charges unless they're going to win. Some have offered up, actually, the feds just always win with their charges. So you take it for what it is. I think the conviction rate for the federal government is around like 98% or some ridiculous number, with, of course, the argument being it's because they only take sure shots. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's because the structure is set up in such a way it's pretty dang easy to get those convictions at the federal level. Trump was saved by the bell. He got elected president. Gavin Newsom is saying there won't be an election in 2028. He fears this. Well, that rhetoric certainly does resonate on the left. And that's where we are, right? Let's roll. Comey's son-in-law quits the DOJ after former FBI chief indicted. What we are looking at is the physical bifurcation. We've talked about the hyperpolarization. We are now seeing the physical polarization. We are going to start seeing alignment. I hope I'm wrong, but I've not been wrong now. And it is mind-blowing to me that anyone would argue we are not in it. I'm going to go ahead and just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's fair to say academically we are in civil strife. But I think this issue for which we debated last night is quite literally the moment before our very eyes. We are in a civil war. And I don't have any other way to describe it. By all means, you can argue it's civil strife. There's been violence before, but something else is happening. When the Weather Underground was engaged in their terror campaign, The country wasn't on the verge of splitting in half between two polarized moral worldviews. Largely, people were upset with the far left. The far left at that time never went away. They simply won the cultural battle. And their ideas began to seep into our institutions, into our media, into our movies. And now here we are. So I give you this. Now, first, let me just say, I don't actually know. Nobody knows when we're in a civil war. But I'd make a few statements for you. From CNN, California bans most law enforcement officers from wearing masks during operations. Gavin Newsom is instructing federal law enforcement to take their masks off, despite the fact that they don't work for the state and they answer to Donald Trump. A law has been imposed over federal agents in the state, challenging who has a right to operate and how. The question now before all of you is, will law enforcement in California arrest federal law enforcement officers who refuse to take off their masks? I'm sure many of you are saying, of course they wouldn't do that. Okay, well, that's the line. Because if that is the case, oh, poor Gavin Newsom, your words are meaningless. I don't know that that's the case, though. I really don't. Now, I mean that sincerely. I'm not saying they will arrest ICE agents wearing masks. But what does Gavin Newsom describe them as? He said, masked men with no badges and all black jumping out of vehicles and grabbing you. I would react, he says. Is that the argument? Okay. Gavin Newsom is laying the groundwork for the arrest of federal law enforcement. Let me read a little bit of the story for you. It's from CNN. California became the first state to ban most law enforcement officers, including federal immigration agents, from covering their faces. Federal. The ban is a direct response to recent immigration raids in L.A. What we are looking at right now is not about the masks. It is about Gavin Newsom saying to the federal government, we will obstruct. Donald Trump's response is going to have to be either ICE, ignore this and continue operations as you've been instructed. Now, here's the question for all of you, because I brought this up in November. I brought it up before November when I debated Sam Cedar. The question I had for liberals who laughed at the idea of civil war in this country, that could never happen. What is required of civil war? Hyperpolarization, one. Willingness to fight and unwillingness to back down from that hyperpolarization. We certainly have that. We have been dealing with a civil strife period. I counted off the top of my head yesterday night, 26 politically motivated acts of violence ranging from sabotage to murder, with the worst, of course, being the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Terrifying. And the question we have now before us is, how far is either side willing to go as it pertains to legitimate authority? So as I mentioned, I debated Sam Cedar and I asked, will Trump use the military for immigration enforcement? The left had argued the whole time that he would. I asked Trump about it personally in an interview, and he said, we're going to use the police. Nobody believed it because there's not enough police. He said, no, we'll use local police. Actually, to be fair, I don't know that he said local. He said police. Maybe he was trying to imply federal law enforcement, ICE. They're cops, right? Well, Trump did deploy the Marines and the National Guard for ICE operations. Now, this was largely to secure federal facilities as far-left extremists firebombed federal property and Gavin Newsom turned a blind eye. This is like privateer-level conflict where the Crown would say, oh, me, oh, my. I have no idea why those pirates are attacking you, my enemies. Because they would give basically a letter of marque saying, you know, we're going to turn a blind eye, engage in piracy, target them, you're good. Privateers, baby. Now, I'm not saying that Gavin Newsom formally went to Antifa and said, do this, but we know the infrastructure of the left and why Antifa does what they do. And, well, here we are. What happened? Gavin Newsom said, no, the National Guard is under our control. Trump sued, no, the National Guard is under our control. Gavin Newsom responded, no, the National Guard is under our control. Trump responded, no, it's not. So who's in command of the National Guard in California? Honest question. Who do they answer to? Now, of course, I think it's important y'all understand that history as we read it is condensed. Meaning when you read the paragraph in the future, it'll say there was a legal battle and dispute between the governor of California and the federal government as to who commanded the National Guard in California. Ultimately, command fell to insert faction. For us, we're just sitting in the muck right now. We don't know how the chips are going to fall, but history will write it's going to be one or the other. And no matter which way it falls, welcome to the conflict. Because imagine if the California National Guard is placed under the command of the federal government, which I believe it will go, in which case Trump then says, we're in charge. Gavin Newsom is already placing laws over federal agents, which brings us to the next question, which you've already heard me say, and I predicted this years ago and reiterated last year. So please tell me I'm wrong, because I am terrified and I hope I am. With this law that Gavin Newsom has put forward, threatening federal law enforcement, instructing them to abide by his rules, the question becomes, will he arrest them? Will he assert authority over federal agents? Let's say the answer is yes. The answer being yes, what do you think Trump responds with if ICE officers get arrested by state police? That's going to be a whole new world. What happens when ICE officers refuse to be arrested and order state troopers to stand down, and both sides say no? Now, that would be a real Fort Sumter. The Hill wrote that the assassination of Charlie Kirk could be our Fort Sumter. But I have another question for you. Many of these ICE agents, they live in California. They have to. Just down the road from us, we have CBP, and these CBP agents live in West Virginia. Well, they have to. I mean, you don't expect someone to live in Washington, D.C. and fly every day to work. That's impossible. And so if the officers are operating in California for ICE, then the federal agents are going to be living in California. They have houses. They have mortgages. They buy property. What happens when Gavin Newsom says to these individuals, Donald Trump has instructed you to wear masks, to engage in this law enforcement. I've told you to stop, and we will arrest you. We will take from you your home. We will affect your family. This is what was told to me last night by the audience and in the debate, that federal agents need to wear these masks. Why? Because leftists will take pictures of them, dox them, and their families will be threatened, and then no one will do this job. Okay, Gavin Newsom told them to take the masks off. So this is where we're at. I ask you, do you think either side will back down? Because that's the important question. If Gavin Newsom says, fine, you've called my bluff, we won't do anything about it, then we win. Trump goes in, he engages in law enforcement, we get the job done. However, when you say that these men would be terrified, that their families would be targeted so they're protecting their identities, Gavin Newsom already has their identities. Gavin Newsom already knows where they live. And if the state says you're breaking the law, these men must face that exact same conflict, mask or no mask. If they choose to keep the mask on, Gavin Newsom can say, we're coming for your family. We're going to go to your house. We're going to kick your door in. We're going to arrest you in front of your children. Okay, maybe you're saying he would never do it. Well, then we've won. Okay, fine. Seriously. If Gavin Newsom has no teeth and this law is meaningless, then it's over. We win. That's the real question. Will ICE be able to carry out their job without interference from law enforcement in California, despite the fact they've made it illegal? I'm not so convinced Gavin Newsom will ignore this. He'll find a way. Why? There's a reason why they passed this law. There's a reason why Gavin Newsom held a press conference and publicly stated, take off the mask. I don't believe that Gavin Newsom, who's trying to run for president, wants to lose in the eyes of the constituents who are demanding he take action. In which case, maybe he won't arrest them outright, but he knows where they live. And if the fear is their families in California are at risk, oh boy. In the American Civil War, which of course was not a traditional civil war, it was something different. The generals they faced a real problem, my home or my country. And what did they choose? They chose my home. Now, many have said, Tim, times were different back then. Each state was a sovereign state in a loose union. People would say the United States are, because each state was in a union. After the Civil War, it became the United States is a singular country. But when these generals in the South, who were trained at West Point, saw their legislatures vote to secede and leave the Union, they said, my country or my home. And they said, my home. I mean, be honest. How many of you who own a home? I know most millennials don't, actually. Around half don't. But let's just talk about your friends, your family, your job. You live in New York. You have a job there. You are given a choice. Stand with the state or the federal government. If you stand with the federal government, you put your home at risk. I mean, your physical home. You could be evicted. You could be jailed. They will come for your children and put them in foster care. They will arrest you. Do you flee? Do you go to D.C. and say, please give me a place to live for my family? And therein lies the principal challenge that we saw in the American Civil War as to why the generals said, I'm not going to choose my country. I have a house. I have a farm. I have animals. I have neighbors. I have a church. I have children. I have a wife. I have invested in infrastructure. I have banks. I have resources here. I cannot walk away from that. Now, of these ICE law enforcement guys living in California and operating there, Gavin Newsom knows who they are. He knows where they live. Will they forego their equity in their home? Will they pull their kids out of school and flee? Some might. I'm sure that was true in the Civil War as well. This is the big question. With Donald Trump's indictment of James Comey, he has signaled real war has begun. Now, as with the battle at Fort Sumter, nobody knew that they were in a civil war. At the first Battle of Bull Run, famously, people held picnics on the hillside because they said there won't be war. It can't happen. In fact, probably the funniest, I don't mean funny, haha, the funniest instance was when, after the Confederates routed the Union troops at the Battle of Bull Run, they had the choice to march on Washington, D.C., effectively ending the war in an instant. But guess what? They still did not believe they were at war. So the Southern troops said, pull back. That'll show them we mean business. But Lincoln was like, nah, we're going to send in the troops. And that's what they did. And the North, oh boy, Gettysburg, the whole history, it's pretty astonishing. I'll call it like that. Now, some have argued the South didn't have the means to march on the North. Even though they won, it was chaos, and Southern troops were still decimated. Indeed, that's an argument that I hear from some historians. Generally, it is believed that though the South was weakened, they could have advanced forward into D.C., but they chose not to. Now, of course, there was going to be risks. There's no guarantee they would have won, but it is largely believed they could have gone and taken D.C. The South did not believe there was a war. They had just fought the second battle in what we historically call the American Civil War, and they still did not see what was right before their eyes. The people who picnicked were in panic, blood splatter, bullets flying. They just can't believe it. We call that normalcy bias. On top of that, you have optimism bias. So, my friends, I don't know that we are actually in a civil war because I can't prescribe that. What I can say to you is this. If we truly are right now at a time where the reason why ICE agents have to wear masks is because the left will come and kill their families, you're in a civil war. I think it's fair to say that it's a civil strife period, like Bleeding Kansas. But I want to make sure this is understood by everybody at the grassroots level. These officers live in California. The fear they have is that Antifa will post their names and pictures, their faces, and it's not just about Antifa doxing them. It's about them walking into a cafe and being told to get out. It's about them going to a hardware store and people saying, I will not sell to you. It's about them trying to hire daycare for their kids, and the woman walks up and goes, no. I am not working with you. The ICE agents are largely at odds with the California people who are, obviously not in like Eastern California and in the farmland, but in the major cities where these guys live and operate. They live there. What happens if the community finds out who these guys are? Right. Now, I said yesterday, I don't think we should have cops walking around in masks. We shouldn't live this way. And the response from most people is, but the left will attack them and come after them. To which I say, if you truly believe that these men cannot function, survive, or live with their identities exposed, no more half measures. The idea then that we are facing an insurgent terrorist threat and a social breakdown to this degree warrants more than just masks. Full-scale occupation. Seriously. Is anybody willing to admit it? So the question now, and I don't have the answer, will Gavin Newsom use law enforcement force against ICE to get them to take their masks off? Because if they do, these guys are going to run for the hills. That's what I've been told. No one will do the job if their identities are exposed. What happens then when federal law enforcement defy Trump and say, we will not go into California because Gavin Newsom's troops will arrest us? What do you think Trump does? The dominoes are falling over. The only way this ends, I suppose, if Gavin Newsom backs down. But then you're going to get far-left insurgent terrorist attacks anyway. We've seen 3 in 3 months on ICE facilities, 3 in 3 weeks across the board. So I'm going to leave it there. I could ramble on this for too much. I got more to talk about. We'll save it for the other segments. Smash the like button, my friends, if you really want to. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next segment.